Good evening, everyone. Let us start the session by chanting Namo Tassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. All right, let us turn to page number 34, please. So, for the ease of those who do not have the handout at hand, I'm also sharing the screen. So we've gone over the parts on Kayanapasana, Chittanapasana, Kayanapasana, Vedanapasana, and Chittanapasana. Now we are going into Dhammanapasana today, the fourth tetrad, the contemplation of mind objects, right? Now, the contemplation of mind objects is something which is done after one has been able to attain jhana, right? The reason for this is, now if you just bring your attention to the words that you just easily see here, impermanence, right? And then we have the fading away, and then we have the cessation of suffering. Now, these are states that become visible when the muddy waters have settled. When the water is muddy, people are unable to see these finer parts of our being, of our consciousness. That is the reason that Dhammanupasana, with regard to the contemplation of mind objects, is always practiced with a certain level of jhana or skill in ekagata, right? So let us go over it. He trains himself thus: I will breathe in, contemplating impermanence. He trains himself thus: I will breathe out, contemplating impermanence, right? What is this? Now, when a practitioner goes into jhana, and within a state of jhana, we know how we attain jhana, we have studied, we have experienced a certain level of jhana, Now, when we come out of jhana, the hindrances are suppressed. Of course, dependent upon how powerful the jhana is, the hindrances are suppressed. When the hindrances are suppressed, at the point of ekagata, we also experience a suppression which has happened to self. Do you understand? A suppression that has happened to self. When the suppression of self happens, it leaves an experience of nothingness within the meditator as the meditative contemplation goes on, right? It leaves a sense of nothingness within the meditator, right? Now, let me just take an example from something that comes close to this experience, which is this. Remind yourself of a time in meditation where you have gone into awareness of breathing, and the mind reaches a state of ekagata. And when the mind has reached a state of ekagata, the breath disappears and everything disappears. And when everything disappears, you are left with a whole stretch of nothing. You do not take it as nothingness. You are left with a whole stretch of nothing. Can anyone relate to that experience? Right? You're left with a whole stretch of nothing. When you reach, I see you, Shriya. When you reach this state, right? This state is intensified when the jhana is strong, because it is a state of one-pointedness, and within that state of one-pointedness, the hindrances are suppressed. Because the hindrances are suppressed, the vitakka, vichara, sukha, ekagata, those parts are also very subtle, especially the vitakka, vichara. Now, when you advert to this experience at that moment, if a meditator is able to do this part, he trains himself thus: I will breathe in contemplating impermanence. He trains himself thus: I will breathe out contemplating impermanence. Upon that experience or stretch of nothingness, it arises as an insight, because remember, we have already practiced, or we have gone through the other 3 parts of insight, right? At this part, what happens is we go into that stretch of nothingness, or we advert to that stretch of nothingness as impermanence, right? As impermanence. If the meditator is able to do so successfully, the meditator will be able to attain the first part of enlightenment, stream entry. Right? The first part of stream entry. Of course, now let me now make it a little bit realistic, right? Which is the fault that we often see. The fault that we often see with that position is this: we experience a sense of nothingness. However, it only lasts for a certain amount of time, and then the vitakka comes back up, losing that whole sort of us trying to define that. What is this? Wow, this feels good. Wow, have I attained something? Wow, have I actually reached a position? Maybe I should share this. Now, all these thoughts, isn't it, that comes, right? All of these thoughts that comes or arises as a result of the hindrances. So then the hindrance that becomes, which acts as a hurdle for us to now instigate or look at this experience through the scope of impermanence, or seeing impermanence through that experience, is or becomes the hindrances, because it disturbs that process, right? It disturbs that process. Now, going back to, now let us 117. Anicca, impermanence, what we call self. No, hold on. Okay, let's read mind objects first, 116. These last 4 stages relate to the meditator who has emerged from the jhana. The first 3, the first thing one should do is to review that state. What is that? How did it arise? How do I feel? Why do I feel that way? What have I been doing all this time? What worked and what failed? What was the result of the meditation? Why is it happy? All such reflections give rise to deep insight, right? Give rise to deep insight. Now, we should not, now I understand as we are reading this, right? What was that? How did that arise? How do I feel? Now, remember, I'm sorry, I'm saying now, what is this? All right. When we should not look at this with gross interpretation, right? We should not look at this by way of a gross interpretation of the way we do it. Remember, we have gone through the first three satipatthanas, and as we have gone through the first three satipatthanas, what was that? These questions, what was that? How did that arise? How did I feel? Why do I feel that way? What have I been doing all this time? What worked and what failed? Such questions arise through insight, remember. Right? This is not the same as you looking at something and then wondering what it is, right? This is not the reapplication of self-thought. This is the awareness through insight over the experience that you've had, which is very important, because or else you will start grasping and believing things that you want to believe and grasp onto. Do you understand? Right? If you want to believe that it is a jhana, you will start believing that it is a jhana. If you want to believe that self has now been suppressed, you will start believing that self has been suppressed. Does not mean that it is true. Right? And the mind will feel pleasurable. It will feel good. That is why it is important that we cultivate this way of thought, which is unbiased, which arises through insight, right? All such reflections give rise to deep insight. Having reflected thus, you either take up satipatthana or just go directly to the last four stages of Anapanasati, right? Or you go into the last four stages of the Anapanasati. Now, the Mahasi tradition, which we will be doing after we go through the sutra and the commentary, the Mahasi tradition sticks to this, right? Having reflected thus, you either take up Satipatthana or you go directly to the last four stages of the Anapanasati. However, the PAUK tradition does not do this. What the PAUK tradition does is they allow you to go through the 40 meditation subjects of Samatha, but not going deep into any one of them, right? They would instruct you to practice the 40, starting from the first, ending with the last, but they do not advocate that you go deep into each technique, but you touch upon the technique, cultivate a level of samadhi, and move on to the next technique, right? What this does is it creates a sense of shield, a guard against one, the hindrances. Two, it also gives you the ability to avoid dry vipassana. Three, it reinforces samadhi in a multifaceted fashion that would allow the vipassana that you do later on after the 40 to be powerful and strong, right? The Mahasi technique follows the fact that if the samadhi is strong, if the anapanasati is strong, you can go directly into the contemplation of the last four stages, right? It is not right of us in any way to make a judgment to say one is better than the other. It is simply two techniques by two great masters. That is all we should, I believe, take it as, right? And do what you find fit with your practice and your inclinations. The meditator has any one of these four following things to contemplate on after emerging from the jhana, which is 117, which is this part. I will breathe out contemplating impermanence. Anicca, impermanence, what we call the self, something that appears to be so constant that we do not even notice it. That we do not even notice it. In jhana, it disappears with the disappearance or the suppression of the hindrances. If you experience this deeply as not self, if you experience this deeply as not self, it is very likely to give rise to the experience of stream winning, right? To the experience of stream winning. However, if the jhanas are not so strongly suppressed, we find ourselves now in this position here. He trains himself thus. I will breathe in, contemplating the fading away. Viraga. He trains himself thus. I will breathe out, contemplating the fading away. Viraga again. Viraga. Viraga also translates as dispassion. If reflections on impermanence does not work, then one should go on to reflect on the fading away. This is when things just disappear. Things which were so close to you that you thought were an essential part of you, right? That you thought were an essential part of you. What you are doing now is looking at the same experience, but in a different scope or with a different scope. We were unable to see the self. Now, what is or how is it that self? We know that self is so deeply rooted into the mind and body experience that we experience as human beings, right? These questions, especially that which arises when we experience pain or when we experience pleasure, deep pleasure, right? The notions, if you just take yourself back to the experience of pain during meditation or the experience of pleasure during meditation, you find yourself with those ah moments or wow moments, right? Remember that those moments symbolizes the self aspect. Those reactions symbolizes the self aspect of our cognitive processes as we meditate, right? As we meditate. And because it happens so much, seeing impermanence all in one go might be challenging to a practitioner. So then what do we do to now become aware of these dhammas? These dhammas, we move on to now observing the viraga, the fading away of those mind objects. The fading away of those mind objects. Viraga. This we can observe, this we can see by focusing the mind, right? Actually maintaining awareness of the mind to observe the passing away as and at times when self arises. Do you understand? Do you understand, everyone? Does everyone understand what I mean? Again, let's take that example, right? We have, or we've experienced this sense of nothingness. Everything has disappeared, emptiness, right? You're at this stage, you can sort of reminisce and go back to that time because I'm sure you've all experienced it by now, right? A sense of a state of nothingness. Now, what we do is we maintain that awareness And as you maintain that awareness, something slips, not flips, slips, right? When it slips, you shift from that nothingness now back to your mind. Understood? Is that relatable? Right? Now, what we essentially then do at this moment, that gives you an object to be aware of. The viraga, the dissolution of that experience of mind slipping and shifting to this new state, which is a more wakeful, not a more wakeful, but it's a more question-filled mind, or mind with vitakka, questioning that state that I was in. Do you understand that difference, that slip? Now, when we are able to notice this difference between this state of calm, tranquil, empty-like state of mind, which now slipped from that state to now us questioning, oh, where did it go now? Right? Where did that go? That moment. Now, you are operating within two platforms, which is calm, tranquility, peace, emptiness, right? Or I'll use the word nothingness, right? To now vitakka, two platforms, right? What we have to observe is the shift between these two here. Do you understand? You might not be able to observe it straight away, that is for sure, right? Because it will happen, it has to happen, or it will happen again and again and again and again, up until you truly find where to look. Do you understand? That position is called viraga, the dissolution. Viraga is far more easier to see in comparison to impermanence. Why? Impermanence is far too fast. Impermanence is far more insidious in comparison to dissolution. Impermanence is the constant change that we experience. Constant change. It doesn't look, or we don't take it as impermanence because it's just life, we say, right? But when it comes to now viraga, the dissolution, right? The displeasure, right? Upon it, now what happens is it's far more of a smaller sector to see. It's far more focused in a way. In seeing the dispassion, the dissolution part there, what you then could give rise to is through that you can give rise to impermanence. You might. Do you understand? Any questions?
Bhante, so you are asking to watch the gap between one-pointedness and any object that comes to your mind, and watch the gap in between. Now, what I have experienced is this doubt that came into my mind, like, where am I? Where am I? And suddenly you frighten, you feel a place. I am lost. I have come somewhere. I have arrived somewhere, but I don't know where I am. I don't know how to get back. It's like I've been completely like a disorientated. You are in a place, been taken and put somewhere, but you don't know how to get back, the journey back, right? So is that the stage you're talking about?
Wonderful, perfect position. First of all, do not call it, yes, I did say gap. I use the word gap very, very carelessly now. If we assume we have two platforms. We always operate with extremes, isn't it? That's what we're used to, right? Either it's good or bad, calm or not calm. We have two platforms. What we look at is the essential position where one platform falls and gives rise to the other. Do you understand?
Oh, I see. I see.
Right? That is not a gap.
Oh, I see.
Right?
Yeah.
Understood? Is that clear to everyone? That is not a gap. One state falls and gives rise to another state. We watch that state, that moment of falling.
So that means the balance stage?
No.
Not even balance.
No. It can be because of the lack of balance, but that comes in the recollection part, where you bring the question of balance in. But this is where you will be able to see, for example, in Anapana Sati, you observed the breath, and at first you thought, okay, I've got the hang of this. I'm observing the breath, the rising, passing away, rising, passing away. Then at one point you realized in between the breaths, the mind is wandering. Right? Or in between moments of awareness, the mind has wandered already. But you only come to realize that bit when your awareness streak has increased a bit. Right? In the same manner, you are in a state of nothingness. And Shriyani, you said just now, you come into a state of surprise and shock. We'll call it surprise. Right, where you surprise yourself, and with that sense of surprise, you have lost what you had. Right? Now, what are we going to observe? Right? What are we going to observe? We have to, one, get back to the meditation. And then observe the fading away, the viraga of that state.
Okay, letting go that state.
No, not letting go.
Oh, I see.
Not letting go as well. The viraga, viraga is the fading away. You watch the fading away of that state. It is nothing, it is not about watching the letting go. It is simply about observing the process of fading away. Now, the state of shock or surprise and the state of peace and tranquility, right? Now, at one point, this arises and this falls. You watch the processes which this faded away and this slowly, this fall, you come to a state where this disappears. Right? Why? Through the observing of the fading away, you go into a state calmer than what you were at.
Okay, understand.
Because the self which held on to or pounced upon that state of peace now disappears, because why? Viraga, the fading away, showed to you that thing that you once thought you needed, you don't need anymore. States that you were surprised of in the first place are states that doesn't surprise you anymore. States that were new to you and novel to you in the first place are no longer novel and new to you anymore. Do you understand? Yeah? So, let's go back to the time when we, started meditating, and then, pain comes. Pain arises. Now you are surprised, you're shocked, or, you get excited, or pleasure maybe. And again, you get excited and surprised. But then slowly you come to realize, as you observe the fading away of the pain or the pleasure, you realize that it is simply self that exacerbates the pain or pleasure, that makes you cling on to the pain or pleasure. When the nimitta first arose, you got excited and surprised, wow, I have a nimitta. And then you slowly come into terms of the nimitta being there. And now you're no longer surprised by the nimitta. Because the moment the surprise gets the better of you, self, that is self. The moment the self arises, this ekagata, the samadhi goes away.
Yeah, understand one thing.
Do you understand? Is that clear, everyone? Yes, dear.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you for that explanation. Because you see, Bhante, why I'm telling you this from my own experience. Because so I do meditation with Adam Brahm, and so I have done these stages. And in fact, the other day he was telling me, whether you have that point there that I just saw it in page 34, or is that the nimitta, that beautiful light, or the feeling? And he was saying, when you're in the feeling, why are you asking? When you're asking, you're just regressing. Why are you asking? You're in the feeling. What more do you want? Because now you're trying to crave something that you don't need. And then I realized, but where I just had a look at this paper here just now. And that in the Kayanupasana, and I know why Sri Annie mentioned the gap, because when you go to people who do the same thing, just like doing mindfulness without leaving out the Buddha out, right? So you don't bring the wisdom. So I've done a lot of meditations with people who don't bring that. They talk about the gap, and actually I can relate the two looking at this paper, because what happens, as Sri Annie says, is so you're observing the breath, you're observing the breath, you're observing it, suddenly the breath disappears. Then for a long while, and I asked this from Ajahn Amaro one day when he was meditating, and then for a long time, and I think this is what Sri Annie meant, you're not anywhere, right? So you don't know where you are, but suddenly you come back, and when you come, oh my God, where I was. So that's what's called the gap. But so I asked Ajahn Amaro this question, and I answered where, and he was saying, you know where, because in what you're explaining so clearly now is in that state. So you have this where you're still with the self and you're feeling the pain or whatever, and then you go down like, and then here the second stage comes in, right? The balancing. But you actually see yes, falling off that things, but you're not, you have to still be the observer. You have to still be body. So that's what Ajahn Namra told me. He said, if you're not there and you're somewhere else, and then that's not really an insight of going deep. You're not there. You have to be there. But what you see is what you're talking of coming up. And that's why you're quite right. You're the first one who said, don't call it the gap, because otherwise you go and you think, oh, you reach something. And Ajahn Amaro didn't tell me, don't call it the gap. But what he said is, you're not there anywhere, because you don't know. You have to be present and be observing. And that's what you're clearly explaining. And as you fall off, you come to that, you have this disillusionment. And that's what you see. And that's not so insidious. And that's what you see. Because what is the point of all this? What's the point of all this? And that's what comes about it. So you explained it so clearly today. You see you falling off, but it's not that you go there, because you have to be the observer and watching it. And you have to watch this going, and you have to see the disillusionment. And you explained it in words very clearly, what other people have been explaining, and not what I got opportunity to speaking to him the other day, and he was saying, you're in that state. Why are you looking for anything? It's a bliss, because here it says, or is that nimitta, that beautiful light or feeling just completely envelops you. But it's so clearly written here. But when you follow the papers and things, it's always about this big light and pulling it and, thinning it and it expanding and boundaries going away. But actually can even be a feeling. But that gap that you fall into when you don't know, and you suddenly come up, and then you go back into self and you say, where was I? What is it? So you have to then step back and start to come to the position where you say, you see the disillusionment, which is not so insidious, that it's like anicca vidya comes and goes away. And then little by little, it's not only in meditation, you will find that when you keep touching that many times, it will reflect into your day-to-day life. life. So for example, when you now, like today, I had an opportunity of doing something very exciting normally. And I said, what's the point? What's the point? I'd rather stay. And I was trying, my printer is not working. My daughter is not yet trying to print out this 54 pages because I didn't have it last time. Luckily, you put it on and I managed to print some of them, but then something happened in the printer and I don't know, I'm not technologically so competent. So I had to go to my neighbor tomorrow. But those things become more important. And that's how you know this disillusionment comes about. The things that normally grappled your mind and you said, oh, you have to go and to do this, whether it's this or that or the other, whether it's food or with this your children or your grandchildren or whatever else it is, or something in the house. Those things don't become important because the disillusionment has come in. So that's how I relate. And then I know to analyze without looking at that moment, but how does this relate? And as you keep on touching it, that's what you will find, Mante. And this is what you told at once. Don't call it a gap. And I think that's a very difficult, the gap is where you're not there. You don't know where you are. And what Ajahn Amaro said is, if you're not there, you're not in meditation. You have to be the observer all the time. And you very clearly explained, you know, how, and then the disillusionment is not so insidious, that this feeling is that we are fading away, the disillusionment, you know, you get fed up. That what is all this about? That you have been so. So thank you for your explanation, and thank you, Sriyani, for asking.
Just a clarification on that part. The thing is, why we don't use the word gap is because the gap truly does not exist. Because the moment the sense of where is this or that question arises, you've already shifted.
Yeah.
Right? So the gap isn't where you ask the question. When the question is asked, there is no gap really. Already the state has fallen and a new state has arisen. And the new state is not conducive to the meditative path because the new state is vitakka. Vitakka led by as a vipassana upaklesha. Do you understand? Right? And remember, at this position, the mind doesn't ask so many questions.
Enjoy.
At this position, the mind does not ask many questions. It is not the same person here today or the same person last week who will be going into this state. At this position, the mind, you are so intimately aware of the happenings of the mind in such a way that you will be able to truly find that position where you shift. This is not possible for a person who has not had that training in meditation before. Right? This comes with a bit, because I mean, you would surprise yourself. You would surprise yourself of the good ground that has been covered through the skill in training, right? Where you have been now able to skillfully locate that shifting point and observe not only the shifting point, but the fading away then leading to the Nirodha. Let us come. The fading away, first impermanence. Breathe in, breathe out, contemplating impermanence. The second, breathing in and breathing out. He trains himself, thus I will breathe in and breathe out, contemplating the fading away. He trains himself, thus I will breathe out, contemplating the fading away, viraga. And now we come to the third. He trains himself, thus I will breathe in, contemplate the cessation, nirodha. He trains himself, that I will breathe out, contemplating the cessation, nirodha. Right? Now, viraga and nirodha. Viraga and nirodha. Viraga was the fading away. The nirodha is that which was there and now no more there. Does it connect? Do the dots connect? Right? Now what essentially happens is, as you observe the fading away, you arrive at a state far more blissful and calm. Why? The grossness of the earlier experience is now no more, as you have gone deeper into the state of seeing what is truly present. Do you understand? Right? What is truly present? At this time, your conclusions, again, if you're still surprising yourself, right, you're really cutting it. You're really cutting yourself short, right? At this state of Nirodha, what you essentially observe is the position when the grossness is no more. A deeper, present, a more pristine, pure state of presence, far different and far beyond that which you experienced before, right? 119, let's go to 119 and see what it is. Nirodha. Something that was once there had now disappeared. So much of the universe that you knew has ceased, and you're in a completely different space. What you thought was important has gone. Cessation is also the third noble truth, the cessation of suffering. The cause of that cessation is letting go. And what is left? The opposite of dukkha, it is sukha. The ending of suffering is happiness. The ending of suffering is happiness. Yeah. Now, what is this? He trains himself thus. I will breathe in, contemplate in the letting go of defilements. He trains himself thus. I will breathe out, contemplate in the letting go of the defilements. Now here, at this state of letting go, right? At this state of letting go, hold on. Right. At this state of letting go, when we have gone through the fading away and into the cessation, which are both very powerful experiences of insight, right? Of insight. Now, through this insight or through this experience, what you now gain is an effective tool. This tool is the insight that you could actually wield in your mind, right? Through that insight now, you can advert that insight to the different dhammas that might be present. By dhammas, I mean phenomena. Of those phenomena, we have the causes of grossness in the mind, the causes of roughness in the mind. Now, earlier, remember, earlier when we observed, think about when you were trying to observe pain, observe pleasure, right? Observe pain, observe pleasure. As you were trying to observe pain and the pleasure, and when you were not so successful, you came into a point of confusion. How do I deal with this? What must I do? Am I doing the right thing? Right? That is vipassana that you cannot yield. Do you understand? It's like a horse rider, an equestrian is able to wield, control the horse. and work with the capacities and the capabilities of the horse. That is a skill of the equestrian, right? Earlier, it was like we were the horse. We were being controlled. We were confused. We didn't know where we were going, but we were doing a practice with Shraddha. But now you become the person who is on the horse. You take control. Why? Who gave you that control? The power of insight gives you that control.
Bhante, is that a Vipassana Jnana?
That is exactly, of course, that is Vipassana Jnana, right? All of these, actually, we've not gone into the Vipassana Jnanas, but within these positions, Vipassana Jnanas exist, right? So as you have gone through the 4 stages, remember that Vipassana Jnana exists, and through Dhammanusati, Vipassana Jnana surely exists. Right? Because it is with those specific jnanas that you gain, the dewdrops and fruits of insight that you gain, that you are able to understand clearly, have a clear vision, a vivid, clear vision of what is going on in your mind. That is Vipassana Jnana. So yes, right? Yes, there is Vipassana Jnana there, but we've not spoken of the Vipassana Jnanas. We will. Right? We will, right? So now let us go to, he trains himself, thus I will breathe in contemplating of letting go. He trains himself, thus I will breathe out contemplating the letting go of defilements. Let us see. While the previous 3 tetrads deal with both calm and insight, this tetrad deals only with insight. Contemplating the fading away and the contemplating the cessation can be understood both as insight into impermanence of formations, right? And as the supramundane path leading to nirvana, right? That is the fading away of lust, viraga, and the cessation of suffering. Contemplation of letting go is the giving up of defilements through insight and the gaining of nirvana through the path, right? Through insight and the gaining of nirvana through the path. Now, if we just through this paragraph, right, we have gone through impermanence, viraga, nirodha, right? Viraga, Nirodha, and then Patinissagga. Essentially, in these 4 paths, we are taught, or we come to understand a position of mind where the things that we first thought were imperative to life is no longer seen as those things which are imperative to life. Do you understand? Right? We go through a process of shifting and change, a truly metamorphical process, where the things that we once held as the core of life is now completely abandoned, and a new set of dhammas are used to see the scope and potential of life. At this position, with the tools of insight, we come to realize that as we once thought many dharmas we needed, but learned with insight that we do not need them truly, we also come to realize that the egotistical, egocentric processes of the hindrances are not the definitions of my life. Right? Are not the definitions of my life. That is what essentially the giving up of the defilements through insight and gaining of nirvana through the path. Do you understand? Right.
Can you repeat again, Bhante, please?
That's the difficult one to get.
That's the difficult
That's
one.
the reality. What we thought, Sriyani, our whole life was the things we like. No, it's very difficult. My brother found it very difficult. He stopped meditating because for him, the music was his love of his life, classical music. And when he went for meditation, we were told that all these things mean nothing. And he said, I don't want to get listened to anything. That what matters most to me is important. And in fact, he told me, don't come to the house and start about this meditation malarkey because I don't want to hear. That's not fair. So that's a difficulty because you see, in your whole life, these skills that we have, whether it is cooking or whether these make a whole of a personality. And when you go into this, and you realize, actually, you know what I've been doing, And it's a very difficult thing. That's not your person at all. Right. So it's very difficult. I think it takes time. But Bhante, I think it's very important. Can we please look at the page 30, Bhante, please? Bhante, are you there, Bhante?
What happened?
Something happened, Bhante. Can the others hear?
Yes.
I can hear you.
Yeah. I'm here.
Sorry, Bhante. Bhante, if you look up at page 30, you were saying you had to be meditating for a long time. I agree with that. But there's another factor. Look at page 30. At the bottom, it says there, only steps 1 and 4 are noted by Pajanati, right? So that's really, really important because only those are Pajanati. After that, it becomes Sikkati. So it becomes training, right? After those first 2 of the first step, right? Then it becomes Sikkati. You're not training. Before that, you're actually, the whole of the things, what they say is that it's that it's bare noting, or Bhante use the word observing for the noting. Yeah. And then the next page, it says a very beautiful thing where the Buddha, right, page 31, that paragraph right on top, it says the Buddha warns Moggallana not to go into the second jhana until he has thoroughly mastered the first jhana. So actually, if we don't do this Pajanati for in the first step, if we don't do the up to the first 1 or 2 is just observing, and if we really don't go into that tranquilizing the body formation, if you don't experience the third one, experiencing the whole body, that's where Ajahn Sucitta told us that we just think it's either the nose or the tongue, but it's that whole of the breath, it's that air element, it's that thing. And I remember one day Ajahn Sucitta in a long retreat telling us 10 or 12 days, that's really the crux of it. If you don't do the experiencing of the whole body, then you get too quickly into the, and that's when you jump out and you drop into the cup and jump out. So that has to be really experienced, and then only you can tranquilize the body formation to feel the difficult. Sorry, Bhante, I just have to share these because these gems fall on my lap with these teachers, and you bring it all together. So I think that's a real winning combination with your enthusiasm. You're one of about 100 there or 200. You're just one of 20 here, Bhante. Thank you. Thank you.
Bhante, can you explain the Patinissagga again, please?
Yes. So the Patinissagga here, this process of Patinissagga essentially is the ability to now clearly, with distinct clarity, see the states of mind that are present, right? With distinct clarity, right? And when we are able to see these dhammas and states with distinct clarity as they exist, as they arise and pass away, the mind at this moment is able to catch on to these processes which might be super fast, but the mind's ability to catch hold of these phenomena, to observe these phenomena rather, not catch hold, but observe these phenomena, increases so greatly that you will see, like, for example, like some sort of insects crawling on your white bed sheets, right? You will be able to spot it and remove it. You will see the arising and the passing away of those phenomena which are the hindrances. And then so distinctively that you will be able to remove it. Just like that, through the understanding of the grossness of the evil nature and the improper existence of those elements in the pure mind. Do you understand?
So that means, Bhante, so you can some kind of how can I say, object can arise, and it could be there bothering you, and which I have experienced. It's like a
no. Here it doesn't bother you.
Oh, I see.
Take it like this. Take the sun. The sun, right? As lustrous, as radiant as the sun is, that's the mind. And in the mind, or on that image of the sun, right? As you see it, you see specks of darkness. And you see these specks so clearly, and you also see the potential that that speck has, if given any sort of allowance to spread. Do you understand? The insight, the mind at this position is powerful, lustrous, radiant. Remember, as we've gone through the Sotapanna stage, we've abandoned hindrances. Sakurdagami, we've abandoned hindrances. Anagami, we've abandoned hindrances. Arhanship, we've abandoned hindrances. We abandoned the whole set of hindrances there, right? And the potential of hindrances itself, we uproot them. At these positions, at the Sotapanna stage, we abandon the hindrances that resonate to the vibration or hinder the vibration of the Sotapanna stage. At that level of mind, at that power of mind, we are able to see those hindrances there and remove them. Actually, no, that's the wrong way of putting it forward. At that level of mind, with the Shraddha elements, in seeing the true nature of the purity of mind at that moment, in the Sotapanna stage, those hindrances are almost kicked off. Sakkaya Ditti, Vichikicca, Silabhata Paramasa. They are not picked out, they are kicked off, if you understand what I mean. Right? For example, you buy a piece of, let's say, you shop for art, and there are some nice pieces down Viharamadevi, you first pick one of those pieces that you find down Viharamadevi Road, right? And then later on you discover a bit of art and, you buy, let's say, a Senaka, Senaratna.
Senanayaka.
So you buy a Senaka or a Palapotupitiya or Anomi, Anoli Pereira, you buy something like this, right? When you buy something like this, you'll probably remove the Viharamadevi one, put it out and put it there if that is the right place for it. Isn't it? That is something that happens with the Sotapanna stage. The path is so clear, the path is something that you cling on to, not cling on to, the path is something that becomes distinctly more clear, that those sort of rocks or whatever it is, just gets kicked off. With the Arahanta stage, the Anagami stage is different. In the Arahanta Anagami state, these are states which is synonymous with the sun itself. Because the mind is so strong. And you only see impediments to that strength. Do you understand? Why? When the insight is present, the hindrances are suppressed. The hindrances don't have power at that moment, but you can spot a tick. You can spot an insect. You will spot the potential. If you give it any allowance, you will spot the danger that it can create. That is where in Patinisakha, that is what you pick out. Do you understand? E dharme thula tibena yatharte therun ganimemma e nivarnaya api ivat karana. The insight, now you might imagine, oh, I can't do that right now. Of course you can't. You don't have the power of insight now. You can do this when you have that tool. When the tool is developed and cultivated now, in understanding how it works, in the separation, viraga that you have to the material world, that is when this happens. As long as, now remember, as long as you are inclined, attached, and greedy for the sensual pleasures, this state will never arise. Right? This state will never arise because the vipassana will not become as strong. Do you understand? The only reason that you can reprogram yourself from samsara, from all, reprogram yourself and rake out those impediments that have been there long in samsara, is now because your interests have shifted. Do you understand? Your interest has genuinely, authentically shifted. Is that clear, everyone? Yes, Samantha.
Bhante, I was just thinking, all this sounds a little bit scary. Sorry. And yeah, I'm assuming this happens gradually. And I thought Nibbana is supposed to be a happy state. So if we get to these stages, it'll be sort of like, I presume it'll be gradual and I wouldn't have gone off the rail. But then I'm giving up all my sense pleasures in a way. That's what I'm, if I want to achieve Nibbana is, I presume, and the ultimate happiness. I'm hoping that this would be gradually, a happy, happy, happy state, like Ajahn Brahm keeps going on about blissful, bliss, 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 bliss. So I'll be so blissed out that I wouldn't be fearful, I suppose, is it? Sorry. I feel I'm going out of this world, sort of universe, and in the end, and
I mean,
with a bang.
Samantha, give me a ticket today. I will fly out of the world.
Yeah, that's true. And I'd like to, but I'm just thinking, I hope it'll be happily.
Well, Samantha, I think this is the thing is, what are the parameters or the measures of happiness that we have? What do we see as happy? And have we realized is that that happiness that we might have experienced is most probably something ingrained in the sensuous sphere experience. What we are talking about here is something that goes far beyond that sensuous sphere experience. Yes, it is very much gradual, right? It is very much gradual. But what I would say is, just take it as it comes.
Yeah.
Just take it as it comes. Because regardless of the inspiration and the beauty of the teachings, we are not there yet.
Yes. Far, yeah, long
Right?
way.
And when we are finally there, right? When we are finally there, now it is something which is manageable, which is like, for example, university. First year of university, if you're just a freshman, you are unable to sit a third year exam or a fourth year exam or the medical end exams. But you gradually get there, right? You gradually get there. And I think that is the position that we must have at this very moment, where we are open to those experiences. We are open and subject to changing our views about the happiness that is available to us. You know what I mean?
So there we're sort of gradually letting go things along the training towards this bit by bit. Each time we're letting go
Absolutely.
of something.
Just take Samantha, something that just popped into my mind is, during the time of the tsunami, when people's houses were washed away and, and the government, now that they've experienced a tsunami for the first time in this scale, they were afraid of another tsunami. So, something that they did was they gave plots of land to people who were living by the side of the ocean to, more inland land to the people. And the people did not like it because they had been there for generations, their stories, their lives, their grandmothers, kittas and kirikittas, and all of these people were on this land and they were just not willing to let go of it. Right? They possibly might have, be better off, possibly safer in the land inland if it happens again. But because we choose to cling on to the same experience that we have been having, the comfort, we cling on to the comfort of the experience, we hold ourselves back from experiencing something profoundly better.
Change, isn't it? Yeah. Maybe not.
The betterness of change. And that is a gradual process. And I think it's very healthy to not sort of envision all of these things all at once, but take it only as inspiration and guidance for the attitude of mind and the way the path is bent.
Yeah.
The way the path is. You know what I mean?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Because nothingness, Samantha, it is not only you. At first, we all fear nothingness. Because nothingness is something that we have never experienced in our life.
Yeah.
Or in samsara.
Yes. I mean, even just experiencing, giving up your senses alone in the path can be quite challenging, your hearing, taste and all that. And then that sort of thing. So maybe it's a gradually process. Yes.
But Samantha, you don't give up your senses. You only give up your attachment and the clinging to it. I mean, the Buddha enjoyed everything. And the other thing is, Samantha, I'm not talking of the others. You're a whole generation younger than me. And I always tell you, I never thought of these teachings at your age. I was just doing what Buddhists were doing in Sri Lanka. So you're very, very lucky that you've come on to it. And if you go to any, and I know you go to teachers whom I go to, whether you go to Sanagaro or Sujito or Brahms or Brahmali or any of these people, they will never tell you to attain. It's always realization. So you don't have to beat your head and not do anything else and sit down and study and study. Of course, pariyatti is important, but then you must to get to Pativedi, right? There's Patipada also. And that you do gradually at whatever level you're comfortable with now, with whatever responsibilities that you have. And it doesn't just come to you. It's a realization. It's actually an erasing away. It's not an attainment. So it's not like you wanted to become the CEO of your company, or you want to get a PhD or reading all the science. In fact, if you start about science with Ajahn Amaro, he always says when you're talking about science, because actually science is only discovering things, and the Buddha already had realized all those things. And this recently, I think he was on that talk, it said that the International Development Program, that monk, Sri Lankan, who, and he said this, he said that there's a big difference between Sri Lankans who live in the West, because he's been all over the West, and Sri Lankans in Sri Lanka, because for the simple reason that when they come later on in the West, they're all kind of professionals who come to the Dhamma teachings there, and those people, they don't talk as a scientist or as an engineer or as a doctor or something, they come as a Buddhist. So he said, you come with the Buddhist mind, then you realize what the Buddha, and that's the level that you talk. Well, on the other hand, if you don't come there, you're like a scientist, you know a little bit, and then you think that's what it is, and you need to cling on to something. For me, that was a real revelation, that talk that we will listen to, because he gave half the talk for meditation. And then only he asked questions and he answered, and everyone talks of a different way. So don't be ever frightened. I always tell my daughter the same thing, right? At your age, we didn't know any of these things, right? But you have come a whole generation before, and we have only another, 1-2 years, I don't know, for myself, I'm saying maximum 3-4, I don't know, right? So therefore but you have a whole life to think. And from a very young age, you are learning the things, which are the things you have to let go. Right. And you are studying Abhidhamma. So you are looking at the mind states, you're looking at the mental formations first, and then the mental factors, the chittas. And so even if you just think, I am feeling uncomfortable, is this greed or is this jealousy or something, something's not right, you can let go. I didn't know any of these things till I became, till I came to England and I met Ajahn Sumedho. I didn't know any of these things. So you must consider how lucky you are. And it's a realization, slow, Samantha. Enjoy the moment as the path will unfold.
Yes, yeah. And like Ajahn Brahm says, the more I unpack my backpack or something, thing, then gradually,
On this weekend, Ajahn, Ikonim Lumpo Sumedho gave it the talk for, it was the 30th, I think, death anniversary of Ajahn Chah, and he gave the talk. And it was so beautiful to hear that even when you were asked to come here after 10 years, after the fears he had, how could this work, right? So, I mean, for us to think we're not even ordained, right? The fears and the anxiety, they talk very openly about them, right? And how could you do, where were you going to live? But they obeyed their masters and they came. So you're in a very good place, Samantha.
Yeah, I think, and thank you, Dale. That's really helpful. And one thing I kept remembering what Bhante said was at some time ago was, Bhante, you said about suffering. We really need to understand suffering. Really, but did Bhante mean that one has to experience the suffering as well? I mean,
well, understanding of the suffering comes through mutual experience, isn't it? And I think something that we often do is when we suffer, we go on the blaming route sometimes, blaming other people for the suffering that we go through. Or we try to find excuses to not take responsibility for the suffering that we are going through. But at the end of the day, it is you sitting here that suffers, right? And knowing the ability to know those processes that are happening, which then are conducive to the suffering that you experience. Yeah. So coming back.
Okay.
Thank you. Samantha. Thank you, Dil.
Thank you all.
Now, what is the time? All right. So Chattaro, okay, we have to read this last part here. Patinisagga. Patinisagga, letting go, abandoning. In this context, Patinisagga is not giving away what's out there, but giving away what's in here. The letting go of the doer, even of the knower, especially letting go of the will, the controller. This is where self and tanha is eradicated. Isn't it? The last two hindrances which are present. This is the part of the end of suffering. Is that understood, everyone? Right. Moving on. Now, Chattaro Satipatthana Paripurana. The perfection of the four stations of mindfulness. And how, monks, is the mindfulness of in and out breathing developed? Often cultivated to bring the four stations of mindfulness to perfection. Kaya Anapana. Monks, whenever a monk is breathing in long, he knows I breathe in long. Or when he is breathing out long, he knows I breathe out long. Or when he is breathing in short, he knows I breathe in short. Or when he is breathing out short, he knows I breathe out short. When he trains himself thus, I will breathe in experience in the whole body. When he trains himself thus, I will breathe out experience in the whole body. When he trains himself thus, I will breathe in, calming the bodily functions of breathing. When he trains himself thus, I will breathe out, calming the body function of breathing. Remember, what are we talking about? The perfection of the four stations of mindfulness. The perfection of the four stations of mindfulness. Right. Then monks, exerted, fully aware, mindful, the monk dwells contemplating the body in the body. What is the body in the body? Which is essentially contemplating the body of objects within the entirety of the body. Do you understand? Right? Contemplating the body of the object within the whole entirety of the body. Right? You might find first the breath. As you breathe, you can feel it at the tip of the nostrils. Later on, you find that the chest, the upper abdomen, the lower abdomen. Slowly, you find with the shoulders, the arms, the pumping of the blood all across the body. As you walk, as you talk, as you eat, as you take a shower, you begin to feel the pulsating motions of the body as you breathe. The object, the body within the body. Do you understand, everyone? Is that clear? Are there any doubts? There's something that can get. Contemplating the body in the body. Let's see what this says. Contemplating the body as body. Verse 25. Contemplating feelings as feelings. Verse 26. Contemplating mind as mind. Verse 27. Contemplating mind objects as mind objects. In each case, they are not to be seen as this is mine. Etam mama. which arises through craving tanha, or as this I am, eso hamasmi, due to conceit mana, or as this is myself, eso me atta, due to wrong view, ditti. In short, such experiences are not such experiences are not beliefs, but direct experiences of reality. Right? Direct experiences of reality. Also, when we look at these words, contemplating the body as body, feelings as feelings, mind as mind, and contemplating the mind objects, mind objects. Another aspect that we can learn from this teaching is the present moment and the notions that we sort of know from Abhidhamma. During one moment of time exists one consciousness. During one point of time exists one specific time. In one specific point of time, one rupa. Right? Of course, many rupas in constant change, but at one point, it is it. Do you understand what I'm getting at? The mind, when we observe feelings as feelings, the thought in our mind which says, the vitakka in our mind that says, oh, there are other feelings. Whilst there is only one feeling at this moment, hence going to the past or the future, not the present. The body as the body, where we go for other experiences of the body while displacing or not giving ear to this experience of the body at this moment. Right? Now, even with, for example, the state of mind we were talking about, the state of one-pointedness and the shift from the state of one-pointed to the state of questioning that we were talking about earlier, isn't that because we fail to see the mind in the mind? The mind as the mind at that moment. So we shifted. Something else. What is this? Right? It speaks to that. At that moment, this is what is. Simple. This is what is. Does that make sense? Yeah? All right. So, putting away covetousness and displeasure for the world. Let's look at this. Putting away covetousness and displeasure for the world. 129. Mentioned in connection with the four divine abodes, right? Putting away covetous and displeasure for the world, putting away 130. Vinaya. This means that the 5 hindrances have to be abandoned prior to the practicing of the Satipatthana. This is because the hindrances in the form of mental impurities weaken wisdom. While a clansman still does not attain to zest and joy that are secluded from sensual pleasures and secluded from unwholesome states, or to something more powerful than that, longing will evade his mind, and remain. Let us see that again. The Buddha tells Anuruddha, While a clansman still does not attain zest and joy that are secluded from sensual pleasures, that means the hindrances are suppressed at that state, referring to the jhanic states, and secluded from unwholesome states, or to something more powerful than that. Longing, and for the other four hindrances, longing will evade his mind and remain. What is he trying to say here? It is not a thing zest and joy that are secluded from or something more powerful than that. Secluded will evade his mind and remain. And that longing will evade his mind. Beneath his mind. This is because of hindrances in the form. Longing will evade his mind. Or something more powerful. I will have to check this out. Does anyone else have any idea what this sentence here is trying to communicate? Or something more powerful than that? Secluded from unwholesome state, or to something secluded from the central place and secluded from unwholesome state. Still does not attain to zest and joy that are secluded from the central place, secluded from unwholesome, or to something.
Bhante, shall I just say what it means to me?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm not sure whether I'm right. I'm just reading for the first time. While a clansman, so anyone of this group, still does not attain. So therefore, now we know that when you come into Vedanupasana, you get this zest and joy. But he said he won't get into that state of zest and joy, the piti sukha, that are secluded. So when you're moved away from sensual pleasures and secluded from unwhole states of mind, or to something more peaceful. So he said somebody doesn't attain to these stages, which are, even if you're moved away from, sensual pleasures and secluded from unwhole states, or to something more peaceful than that, like longing. And so longing is kama, chanda, but the other four hindrances are also included, the vyapada. If you don't move away from these things and attain that peace, then the other four hindrances will invade his mind and remain. So if you don't get secluded and you don't realize this away from it, then what will happen is that karma, chanda, because if these other four hindrances haven't been removed, you haven't come to that state of complete concentration and focusing on that, then these other hindrances will invade his mind, like karma, chanda, and the other four hindrances will invade his mind and remain.
If you do, okay.
Yeah.
So where does this or to something more powerful than that belong to? sensual pleasures and secluded from unwholesome states, or to something more peaceful than that. What does that refer to? Okay. So that refers to does not attain to zest and joy, or to something more peaceful than that refers to that section of zest and joy.
Joy. Yes. Yes,
Okay.
but right.
Okay.
And in that longing, he's not only taking the kama chanda, but even the other 4 hindrances. So basically what this is saying is that unless we have still the hindrance abandoned, not still, abandon them before practicing satipatthana, then the progress of this piti, sukha and things, as you were mentioning, is very much more difficult.
Yeah.
But what we try to do is we try to practice this, hoping that that will give you to, of course it helps, but I think you have got to also at the same time practice when you're not sitting down and doing the satipatthana, you have to gradually, do you see this here? Netam mama neso hamasami naimaso atasiyo etamo. This is not me, this is not mine, and I'm not this and this is not myself in Anatta Rakkana Sutta. That kind of thinking has always got to surface in your mind, even in your everyday life gradually. I mean, I'm not telling like for Samantha when you're much younger. I think it's great that she's done so many retreats, even recently more than I have done. And I'm always asking, how does she manage the job, parents? I couldn't have, I tell her, but I think it's, it's all a question of gradually, of not attaining Nibbana as all these other people, but for us it's realization of what is always within us. And that's a slow process because our mind is with jobs and so many other things. Of course, if you had done a whole lot of merit like Visakha had done, so many other people, Upalian people, or even Bahya, when the Buddha says once tuck you get, but for a majority of it, we have come down for 2,550 years and not even been Sotapanna, so we have been born. So we have a lot of things to rub away.
Thank you so much for sharing. And okay, so we've also come to the end of our session, and we will continue next week. I think it was a brilliant session actually, and we discussed so many wonderful things. So take care, everyone. And I will see you, for those of you who are joining tomorrow morning's morning mindfulness session at 7 o'clock. And take care and have a lovely, pleasant rest of the night. Teruvan Sarnai. Good night.
Teruvan Sarnai.